At the start of the show, there's this audition day, and there's like 100 people and I choose the guy I'm going to use. But we did a lot on that day, which never made the show. And one of the things we did was, so the room is actually divided between people who identify strongly left-wing and strongly right-wing. So we did some things, and could you get people to change their opinions, and what would it take? Based on the idea that one of the reasons why the Conservatives, or at least right-wingers, tend to have, Republicans and so on, tend to have an electoral advantage, is that they hit a lot of moral trigger points for us. And there's a great book called The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt that goes into this. Our feelings of, because they're about protecting the group, so that taps into our instinct for things like preserving authority and loyalty and so on. There's a bunch of sort of moral triggers that they tap into, whereas the liberal urge is mainly about compassion. That's sort of one note that tends to get hit, and because generally, like Republican and right-wing rhetoric tends to hit a lot more like moral notes, they tend to have a bit of an electoral advantage and they get voted in more. However, so the point of this experiment is, by priming people with different, with these sort of instincts, could you get them to change their socio-political views? So if you're protecting the group, which is the right-wing instinct, you're very sensitive to threat, right? Threat to the group. And so the first experiment we did was we flashed up loads and loads of images. Everyone's wired up to these clever things that can read their, micro this and sweating and so on. And sure enough, every time it sounds silly, but you flash up a picture of a puppy or a kitten or something that would make you feel compassionate, all the left-wingers fire up, right? They physiologically fire up. Nothing really happens on the right-wing side. When it's pictures of witches and ghosts and monsters and aliens, all the right-wingers, because it's
stealing our jobs.
It's threat, right? So that was like interesting, and it sort of was exactly what the research said would happen. So then we did this experiment, which is also part of written up in Jonathan Haidt's book, which is where the idea came from. So if you take your right-wingers, who's if the basic idea is one of threat, that's kind of what they're predisposed to feel, right? Is they're more prone to feeling threat from outside. What if you made them feel invincible? So I just got them to imagine that they had a superpower that meant that they were impervious to harm, and just
you got them to imagine it, or you hypnotised them?
No hypnosis. Literally, just I'm reading a script. They close their eyes. All of you just imagine this, and now fill out the questionnaire. And the questionnaire is asking for their socio-political views. They've answered these same questions before, worded a bit differently, so it's not obvious they're repeated.
Oh, cool!
But we've got their answers from before, and now we look at their answers after that 5-minute priming exercise to feel imaginatively less threat, right? To feel invincible. And their answers are more left-wing. We did the opposite thing with the left-wingers by inducing disgust, which is another kind of which is why all this, the sort of racist rhetoric and so on historically has always been tied in with
rats,
language, rats, dirt, and so on, vermin,
parasite, swarm.
So we literally had fake sick on the floor as they came in. There was rubbish and crap everywhere. The room stunk. We were apologising, saying there'd been an accident before, but we had to do this really quickly, so ignore the smell. Sorry. They come in, I give them a brief visualisation about what happens to the body after you die and how it decomposes, and then they fill out the same questions, and they give much more right-wing answers. And it was really
enough for them to cross camps.
Yeah, well, pretty much. Yeah, absolutely. They're giving it's a big difference. It's a big difference. So the interesting thing there is we like to think that our religious our political convictions are rationally come by, that we weigh up the issues, we weigh up the
Brilliant.
Yeah, but they're not. They're these gut instincts that we have to things like threat and disgust and so on, which colour everything else, and the rational mind follows afterwards.